Welcome back to Beer Brackets, everybody, and welcome back to our Oktoberfest celebration. We're continuing right on, Alessandro. We already reviewed the Hofbräu Original, which we mentioned in the review is one of the 6 main breweries that are usually invited to take part in the traditional Munich-based Oktoberfest celebrations. So we had to start with the original when talking about Hofbräu, but now we are moving on, Alessandro, to their actual Oktoberfest lager. So the big differences between this one and the original is that this one is a little higher in alcohol. It is 1.2% higher ABV to be exact. So we're looking at a 6.3% alcohol beer instead of a 5.1. There's actually a really good reason for why Oktoberfest beers tend to be higher in alcohol, man. Going back to what I mentioned in the What is Oktoberfest video, and we're talking about that traditional period of not brewing beer that existed in the early 1800s due to just the lack of refrigeration for one thing, the types of vats that they used to use for fermentation, but they would just not brew in the summer months. So they would brew these beers in April and then keep them and age them over the summer, and then they would pop them open in September or October, hence the Oktoberfest beers. But they would also make them, one of the things they would do is make them slightly higher in alcohol. And the higher alcohol content would help them store better and age better over the summer sitting in those barrels. So this one's a little bit lighter than the stereotypical Oktoberfest beer that we think of, right?
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the interesting things, like we mentioned in our video. A lot of the actual Oktoberfest beers that are served in Oktoberfest over the years have gotten like lighter and drier. So if you come to this experience thinking about like your classic Oktoberfest beer that you can find in North America, you're going to find it actually closer to almost like, I don't want to say a Pilsner, but definitely a lighter lager, because
a lighter lager.
A lot of the Oktoberfest beers that we do have here in the US and in Canada are thought more in the traditional way of the Marzen, which is way darker, almost in like an amber color.
Well, there we go. So we have a little bit of a background. This is one that is traditionally, of course, served at the Munich-based Oktoberfest celebrations. You can get their original as well, Hofbräu being one of the major suppliers for these traditional parties, but they always break up their traditional Oktoberfest lager as well. My friend, let's break them open, let's pour them out, and let's get started.
Let's do it.
Because I can't wait to see how this compares to the original. So yeah, what you think of the stereotypical Oktoberfest beer, this is definitely much lighter than that. This really does look like a Pilsner.
Doesn't it? Yeah, it's light in color at least. So clear.
So light. All right, my friend, I will let you get started. Aroma cheers.
Cheers.
What do we think of the Hofbräu Oktoberfest aroma?
Well, we just reviewed the original, like you said.
We did.
And you can absolutely tell that this is coming from the same brewery. It's similar. It has those same beautiful, bready aromas that we described it as almost as oregano's, herbal notes. But the malt is turned on like way or higher on the volume knob, so that comes across a little bit stronger. I think I'm still going to stick like consistently with the aroma like what I did with the original. This is a 3-on-3 aroma for me as far as lager goes, because it's just so delicious and inviting and pleasant. Like you can't really get or wait to get into the glass. What do you think, my friend?
I'm having the same kind of muscle reactions like I did with the original, where as soon as I take a sniff, I put it in my mouth and just trying to take a sip. You know what? That's interesting that you said what you did, because I need to pour out a little bit of a refresher here. I'm actually getting a little bit of a weaker aroma on this than I got on the original. I mean, it's delicious. You get the same things that you do out of the original. It's very bread forward. It's very malty. There's a little bit of spice in there. Maybe a little bit of a hint of fruitiness or almost like a floral touch that you could detect out of it. It's a little weaker than the original though, which is surprising for me because, you think like the higher alcohol percentage, you'd expect it to be a little bit more malty. Mine is a little bit lighter, so there's not as much there. I'm going to give it a 2-on-3 for the aroma, just because there's not as much as I remember out of the original, and I'm dying for a little bit more. I want to be more sort of overwhelmed by the malts and by the breadiness. So I'm going to start with a 2 on the aroma, but I get a feeling that the taste is going to make up for it, my friend. So cheers.
Cheers to you, my friend.
Happy Oktoberfest. Let's see what we think. Oh, wow.
Well, I would say you can definitely tell there's a little bit higher alcohol going on there. Like it's not like strong, but just having had the original recently, it stands out like pretty clearly.
It does. It does
definitely. It is more malty, but I will also say that it's very well balanced with the hops. So the maltiness, at least for me, doesn't come across like as strong as I was expecting from the nose. I find it actually very interesting in the way it balances all the components. Surprisingly, I would say it's almost like a little bit too hoppy compared to what I was expecting.
Really?
It almost leans a little bit more towards the hops, which I think it's also one of the things, like those Oktoberfest beers, like the way they're served over there are completely different to what we are used to thinking here. But if you follow the channel, you kind of know how I feel about the hops, like if they're a little bit too much. So it doesn't quite deserve a 3 for me. I think I'm going to stick with a 2 on the taste.
It's definitely a little hoppier. You are right. Because of the higher alcohol percentage, I mean, there's a lot more malt that comes through. And when you have something that's a little bit more malt forward, there's almost a little bit of sweetness that comes from that, right? If you think of eating like a very, very sort of flavorful, thick whole wheat bread, something that's a little bit more grain forward, there's almost a little bit of a sweetness that comes through on it. And I'm getting a little bit of a sweetness on the taste on this one that I didn't get out of the original. It's a little hoppier. It definitely is, but I'm loving it. It's so well balanced. It's perfectly balanced. It's delicious. It's refreshing. There is enough flavor there, but not too much that it makes it overpowering or makes you want to sort of space out your sips a little bit. It's delicious. This is a 3-on-3 taste for me, man. I'm going to disagree with you respectfully on that one. It's funny. We both have two alternate 3s and 2s, but let's talk about the mouthfeel, man. So far, you know what? Actually, the original had 2 perfect scores, right? It had 2 3-on-3s.
Yes, it did.
So far. So right away, the Oktoberfest is sort of lagging behind a little bit, which is surprising, but let's see how it does on the mouthfeel.
Well, we got a refresh here for the mouthfeel.
You're absolutely right. I was too busy taking a sip.
I
was so drawn in that I forgot to refresh for the mouthfeel.
It's the Oktoberfest reflex. You want to drink as soon as you smell. That's what we're going to call it. So, in the original, I thought that like that stickiness and oiliness was almost, it was there for just a moment. Personally, at least, I'm not finding it here as much. Maybe it's because of the way the hops are balanced out here, like the fact that it's a little bit more bitter to me. It feels like that. And even, yes, it's more malty, but the mouthfeel itself is not as sticky and oily. It's actually quite clean and refreshing. So I kind of like that. So if the original was a little short on that, here, as far as lager goes, I'm going to keep it on the 3. I really like that.
Yeah, it doesn't have that oiliness and that stickiness that we talked about with the original. And maybe the extra bitterness has to do with that. It creates sort of like a sharper mouthfeel. For a 6.3% beer, this mouthfeel is fantastic. I could use a little bit more carbonation on it for me personally, for what normally constitutes a perfect mouthfeel for me. But you know what? That doesn't even take it down. All things considered, I'm going to give it a 3-on-3. This is a wonderful mouthfeel. It's very inviting, very refreshing. So the finish, and the finish is interesting because normally these higher alcohol beers, it's not super high, but 6.3 is high enough for a lager. Normally the finishes tend to be a little strong.
Having just had the original, you can definitely tell on the finish. That's where you can tell the most that it has higher alcohol.
Yeah.
Like it really warms you up. So it's there. But I will say that it's done in an incredibly balanced way. It lingers, but not too much. It has all the good elements of the Hofbräu original, where you get the hops, you get the malt. The malt comes across a little bit more, actually. So
it does.
It's tough. It's a very good finish. But somehow, I don't know, there's something that is missing to me personally to give it a perfect score here on the finish. I think I'm gonna stick with the 2, a very high 2. What do you think, my friend?
Very high 2. I'm gonna classify this with other higher alcohol lagers. So anything in the 6 plus especially something pushing 6.5 like this. The finish is, I love it. It's incredible. It's barely there for a beer of this alcohol percentage. And I think the extra alcohol doesn't really make a difference with these things, right? It's not like the fact that it's higher alcohol alone is going to bump it up in score. It's not necessarily something that we're always looking for. It's not the most important factor when you're evaluating a beer, but the fact that this is 6.3%, the fact that the finish is so clean, it cuts off so quick, it's unbelievable. I mean, if I think of other 6.3% lagers that I've had in my life, I look at local beers. I think living in Canada, probably like Labatt Blue or Labatt Blue Dry. I mean, these are beers that I'm probably used to in this maybe same category where they're in that 6+% range. And that finish just kills you. I mean, for me, taking a sip of one of those, of like a Labatt Blue Dry over here, it's like that finish just stays, it sticks in your mouth. You can taste it for 10 seconds after taking a sip. This is so refreshing. It's gone right away. So, I mean, it's so well done. I mean, look, the brewery's been around since 1589, just after the Middle Ages. And they've been around for a long time. They know what they're doing. It is a 3-on-3 finish for me. I have to give it perfect scores. So my friend, it comes down to the overall experience. The Hofbräu Oktoberfest celebratory traditional lager. What do you think?
I was kind of listening there to what your points were on the finish. And I think that that kind of helped me pinpoint a little bit what was falling short for me on the finish is that it's very abrupt. But overall, considering all the different parts, I think this is very nice experience. I think it has all the elements for being a beer that is easily sessionable. I can see why they serve it there at the Oktoberfest because it's it's a happy beer. It's a delicious beer. Like we've said before, you kind of want to always evaluate the beer in the moment, and I think that this beer absolutely deserves a 3. While on a couple of categories it might have gone a little bit low, but I think the overall experience for considering the alcohol content and how well it's balanced and all the elements and how they're coming through, this is a delicious beer that I would love to drink again and again.
As an overall experience for the original, I gave it a 2, and I was a little bit torn about that because for as well brewed as it was, as well balanced as it was, there was a little bit of originality. There was a little bit of something that there wasn't a lasting effect that it had on me. There wasn't something that stuck out. This has that though. And for me, it's that same thing I mentioned. It's the higher alcohol content, which makes it a little bit more flavorful, a little bit more pungent, a little stronger, while still keeping that same interesting, refreshing balance that the original had. So this makes it special for me. It makes it something different that I haven't had in this category of lager of this alcohol percentage before. So it's going to be a 3-on-3 experience for myself as well, my friend. This is amazing. Look at this, the Oktoberfest. Guys, this is pretty amazing because we pretty much flipped our scores from the Hofbräu original. Alessandro gave the original a 4.66 and I gave it a 4.33. Now it's reversed. The Hofbräu Oktoberfest for me scored a 4.66 on 5. And for Alessandro, slightly less, just like mine was for the original, 4.33 on 5. If you haven't opened and closed your Oktoberfest beer brackets yet, definitely do it with a Hofbräu. They're one of the breweries to take a look at if you're interested in exploring the lore and the legends of Oktoberfest. Get yourself a Hofbräu. Of course, there are many other breweries that could be associated with Oktoberfest. We look forward to exploring those next year. For this year, this concludes our Oktoberfest celebration, my friend.
Cheers and or Prost, as they say over there. And don't forget to close your Oktoberfest beer brackets.
Guys, stay tuned. We have tons more amazing content to come. We even have a little bit of a Halloween surprise. Something to do with beer spirits, which has been a little bit of a common theme that's been going on the past couple of weeks in the beer brackets world here. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.